What's going on, everybody? It is your boy Zamboni. I'm a musician and astrologer, and it is time to talk about the astrology of the week ahead. As always, I thank you so very much for being here. Thank you for sending this to a friend. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Thank you for checking out the music on Spotify, Tidal, Pandora, and listening to Can't Help Myself. There's a breath exercise called Breathe. Just listen to that. I am so very proud of that. Thank you for doing that. If you want to send me a tip via Venmo, Cash App, PayPal, if you want to get on Patreon, get an election report to time your life, if you want to get an astrology reading, we can talk face to face. If you like this format and you like a 10-minute situation where I sit here and talk about your chart specifically, you can find all that at zambonifunk.com. As always, I appreciate y'all. Let's talk about the astrology of the week ahead. This week we've got so this is the end of Mars retrograde in Gemini. So Mars moved into Gemini back in September, I think, of 2022. Mars in Gemini moved forward, back, forward again. And so now we are getting to the end of that shadow period, the period or the area of sky where Mars didn't quite finish and so had to go back through. That's called the shadow area. And so Mars is at the very end of that. So this is interesting because Mars is going to have to square Neptune. And so Neptune is in Pisces, which is very cloudy, nebulous, oceanic, boundaryless already. And then Neptune is real big on boundaryless, big on confusion, dreams, illusions, delusions, all these kinds of things, right? Imagination, really strong imagination. And so to have Mars square to Neptune, we've got like the imagination like of war or rage or irritation, conflict, these kinds of things, right? So that sort of like wants to pop up in the imaginal this week, and probably in a way that will be recognizable, that'll probably be like another pass through this same thing. So Mars retrograde in Gemini has been talking probably loudly. It's probably not a secret to you what this is. You can always take a look in your chart, or you can ask me to take a look at your chart and see what house this is in for you and see what kind of house rulership we got going on and this kind of thing. You can take a look to get ideas about that. But Mars retrograde in Gemini was probably some kind of reevaluation of the plan. You tried to move forward on something, didn't work properly, had to go back, do it again. And throughout that time, it's been pretty frustrating and all this kind of stuff, right? So Mars retrograde, or Mars in Gemini now, is going to make this square to Neptune. But at the same time that square to Neptune is happening, also the sun is conjunct that Neptune, and also Mercury is conjunct that Neptune. So we've got a Mercury cazimi on top of that Neptune while Mars is square to that. And that's happening on Friday. So that's a lot to be going on all at the one time, especially a Mercury cazimi. So a Mercury cazimi, I generally like to talk about as a special message from the king, right? This is like Mercury has come in and is at the same degree as the sun. So whenever a planet is super close to the sun, then it's called combust, right? That's a situation where you can't see that planet in the sky because the sun outshines it. And so that generally turns into some kind of situation where it's like there's all this static in the signal. You can't really, like that planet is going through a purification process. I'm gonna call you back next week is how that planet generally gets to, right? And then there's this moment where there's a moment of clarity. Like in that moment of conjunction, then something wants to come through. So the thing that wants to come through is Neptune and Mars. So it looks very confusing, to say the least. It's probably a pretty good time if you wanted to like play a mean trick on someone in order to make them angry, or like a prank or something like this. Is probably good pranking sky. So be aware of that and be careful of that, because that's going to be just building up all week, right? It happens on Friday, but it's kind of like getting closer and closer to that moment the whole time. Also, if we take a look back a little bit earlier, the day before that, then Venus is going to be at the very end of Aries and making a square to Pluto at the very end of Capricorn. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, because in a month and a half or so, we've got new moon solar eclipse at that degree, at that last degree of Aries. And so that's going to sort of begin that cycle in some kind of way. So whatever sort of Venus things, we can think about relationships, we can think about pleasure dynamics, we can think about attraction, or Venus-Pluto a lot of times will have something to do with obsession or jealousy or something like this, right? So that sort of stuff, right? And so that's really good for taking things out of context, or like taking things out of proportion or something like this. And then with Mars Neptune also, then like that, it looks really ragey. It looks like a difficult time getting on the same page and being agreeable about things. And then, so that's the day before that conjunction or that whole Mars-Neptune situation happens, right? Is Venus-Pluto. Then Venus is going to move into Taurus, right? And we do like to see Venus in Taurus because Venus rules that area of the sky. That's a benefic indignity. We love to see that shit because there is not enough nice things going on around here. So we do like to see Venus, who is very good with sort of elegance and grace, and especially with Taurus, it makes me think a lot about like things that taste good, or like splendid sensory experiences. That's how I like to think about Venus in Taurus. Now, one thing about this Venus in Taurus in particular is that it's, as soon as we get into Taurus, then there's a sextile to Saturn in Pisces. Oh, that was the other thing, is that like Neptune, this time around with Neptune has Saturn present in Pisces also. So that's like gonna be grumpier than even the last Mars-Neptune square was. And that was pretty fucking grumpy. So beware of that as well, right? So we got that sextile to Saturn from Venus. As soon as Venus moves into Taurus, and we got that sextile to Saturn. That's nice. That's gonna be like, Saturn in Pisces is going to be strong water nourishment kind of energy. There's a lot of water there. And so that in the fecundity of Venus in Taurus looks like it's very fertile. It wants to grow things. It looks, that looks really good for arts and all the rest of that, right? So especially if you're feeling wild and crazy, if you're feeling like everyone is suddenly your enemy or something like that, like you're maybe potentially making up stories in your head, and it's impossible to know what's in your head versus outside, right? I'm not trying to call you crazy. I'm just saying I'm crazy, and I don't know where my crazy stops and where other people's crazy begins, right? And so that is kind of the dynamic, right? So one way to deal with that is to punch a motherfucker in their grill. That's an idea. Or we could also make some good art about it, because Venus in Taurus looks real good for that. Venus in Taurus is also going to be closely conjunct the North Node for this first bit of this time in Taurus here, right? And so Venus on the North Node tends to want to turn things up, wants to do more of things. And so more Venus in Taurus is more splendid sensory experience. That's cute, and I like that. It does look a little bit gratuitous, perhaps. It looks like it wants to get, it looks very me-centered. You know what I mean? Like the things that feel good to me, I'm going to do those things that feel good because they taste good to me. You know what I mean? It gets to this question of like, do you love fish, or do you love the way they taste, right? Because if you loved fish, maybe you would leave them in the water or something like this, right? So there's that kind of dynamic shows up here, especially when things are as tenuous as they are with this Mars-Neptune square. So that it's really interesting that all of that happens on the one day. That's all on Friday, which also happens to be St. Patrick's Day. So it looks like a really good day to get too drunk and get into a fight. Look out for that shit. Maybe don't do that, but if you are gonna get super drunk, then like try not to start a fight, or be aware that fights might break out around you or this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. My uncle always used to say, remember that you want to see the entertainment, not be the entertainment. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to get an astrology reading, you know where to find me at zambonifunk.com. If you want to listen to the music, I would love if you would do that. If you want to do the breath exercise and you want to tell me how it made you feel, tell me it was whack even. Tell me it was boring or whatever it is. I just like to hear the feedback. I'm super proud of the event. Thank y'all so much for being here. I appreciate you for sitting through this shit every time. Peace and blessings. I look forward to seeing y'all next time.